This is the Orlando Sentinel Editorial Board meeting with the Orlando City Council candidates for District 1. The candidates with us are Jim Gray, who's the incumbent, Sunshine Grund, a challenger, and Bill Moore, another challenger. I want to thank you all very much for participating. We appreciate it a lot. Maybe you could each just take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourselves by way of background or whatever else you want to say, and then we'll just ask you some questions. Mr. Moore, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Bill Moore. I'm running for Orlando City Commissioner, District 1. Lifelong resident here in Orange County, born and raised. Was a police officer with the Orlando Police Department for over 20 years. Volunteered thereafter for about a year as a reserve. And then I entered politics shortly thereafter, after seeing that some things need to be changed. Now at the city level, we have issues of buying land without really a purpose behind it. We have vendors being paid and budgeted hundreds of thousands of dollars for services, and we need to allocate funding appropriately. And once we do that, then we can get the public safety and all the other amenities in line. So I encourage you to go to votebillmore.com to read more about my platform.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gray?
Yeah, thank you. Jim Gray, and I am a 33-year resident here of Orlando. Grew up in upstate New York, a little farm boy with an agricultural background. Spent some time in the Air Force in San Antonio, Texas. Went to school at University of Houston and started a banking career there, and then moved to Orlando 33 years ago. Have been a resident of Lake Nona for 17 years. And so my wife and I moved out there when it was still very much rural area. That's changed dramatically. And for my day job, so to speak, I run the local office for CBRE, which is a commercial real estate sales and brokerage firm.
Thanks very much. And Ms. Grund?
Yes, thank you, Sentinel, for allowing this opportunity for us to speak to the voters and empowering and educating them. I love Orlando. I grew up walking Lake Eola as a child. We came into the city as a children's home, and the house parents brought us there, but I actually came back and decided to live here, went to school at Valencia, got a degree there, got a Bachelor of Science in Psychology at UCF and a Master's in Nonprofit Management from the College of Health and Public Affairs. Go Knights, so I'm a Knight. Orlando has been beautiful to me and my family. I actually met my husband in Orlando. We've been married for over 16 years. We have 4 amazing children. We have adopted, and our philosophy is we serve where we are able, and I'll share a little bit more about that hopefully through this opportunity. But just know my vision as a candidate and would be as your commissioner is to keep Orlando safe, smart, and sustainable.
Okay. A question I typically lead off with on these interviews is just asking people to distinguish between themselves and the other candidates, not necessarily by experience, but by where you differ on policies. In other words, how you all might vote on certain things that would be different from the others. So, Ms. Grund, could you start, please?
Of course, I love this question. It's one of my favorite, and I think I have a clear distinguishing attribute that the other candidates don't have, and that's my vote is not for sale, just like your vote is not for sale. I'm not taking any campaign contributions, and you're like, well, how are you doing it? Well, I get to serve the citizens of District 1 when you show up. I visited all 8 polling places through the campaign. And I plan to be there throughout my service to you, hearing your voices and your concern. And so what distinguishes me from the other candidates is I don't have a conflict of interest. When I make a vote on policy, it's going to be what is best for the citizens because that's who I am responsible to.
Okay, Mr. Moore, what about you? How do you differ from the others, policy speaking?
Sure. My background is, as everyone knows, I was a police officer, so public safety is really critical in my eyes for the city. I have a security management degree, and I don't believe any of the other candidates have a public safety background as much as I do. My vote is also not up for sale. I also don't foresee any conflicts for me voting on issues, either for District 1 or citywide issues. Uh, you know, conflicts are not representative for our constituents. We have to get in front of the problems that people are experiencing. One of them is jobs and employment. And one of the things that occurred within the recent past is the ordinance for downtown businesses to keep their music below 70 decibels, which is basically a vacuum cleaner. So they've shut down outside patio, they've shut down anything inside, and the sound can't escape their premises, or they get a visit from code enforcement. We've already lost one establishment downtown because of that, and all the employment that goes with it. Equating sound to crime is ludicrous, and they're supposed to do a study to justify their stance now, and that's due in January 31st of 2021. I can tell you right now that they're going to back into that study the data that they want to use to keep that ordinance going. I am not in favor of that ordinance. It kills jobs and it kills downtown development. In fact, the Performing Arts Center is exempt, has been exempt from that decibel rating, even though they're within the downtown map of the boundaries for the downtown corridor. They're supposed to be adhering to that policy or that ordinance. So preferential treatment will not occur when I'm the city commissioner for District 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gray, how about you? How are you different in your policy positions from your challengers, do you think?
Right. It's interesting. I think the key word is just experience and my background being in business and real estate. You know, District 1 is the largest geographic region, and it's really almost two districts in one, and that is the Conway, Bryn Mawr area is a stable community. Not much growth there, and their issues are typical potholes, tree trimming, speeding through the neighborhood, those type things. And I think I've built a very good team at District 1 to interact with the neighbors to deal with that. And so I remind my neighbors when they're voting for me, it's not just me, it's the team I built, both from a police liaison as well as the aide, because the folks in Conway, you know, just need access to city services. The other part of the district is the growth engine, and that's what we typically refer to as Vista Lakes, Lee Vista, and Lake Nona. I've said before, you probably heard me say it ad nauseum, but I'm in my 9th year, and consistently, month in, month out, 1 out of every 3 building permits comes out of the Lake Nona area, whether that's residential or commercial. And so we're the growth engine for the city. My real estate experience, unlike my 2 opponents who are great people, but you need experience to kind of balance what I understand what developers want because I'm in that business. So I know their needs, and oftentimes their requests are over the top and not appropriate. But oftentimes they have requests that are appropriate. And what I try to do is balance what their requests are with what our planning staff is doing. And I think if you check with staff as well as some of the developers and landowners in Lake Nona, they'll tell you that I do, not perfect, but I do a pretty good job of balancing those two because I think I understand certainly what our planning staff is trying to do, but also what developers are trying to accomplish because they're making a big investment. And you know, they and their investors want a return on their money. So we've got to balance those two. And I think that's the experience I have that my 2 opponents do not.
Okay. Well, let me ask you all about a recent vote taken on the development proposal in the Rosemont area. I'm wondering for the challengers, how you would have voted on that. And for Mr. Gray, maybe you could talk about the reasons why you voted the way you did. Ms. Moore, how about you first?
Well, we shouldn't be voting on anything until we have our public safety, the numbers in public safety for fire and police and infrastructure in place. And we don't have that in place. So, you know, you're going to have to evaluate things as far as infrastructure, transportation and area, road congestion. So I would probably would have voted against it, just for the fact that the municipal planning board has not been providing accurate information to city council, and I would have to review it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Gray, can you talk about how you voted and why?
Sure. Yeah, I voted to support it and approve it. The reason I did is I really yielded to our staff as well as the municipal planning board. And as Bill may or may not know, when the staff recommends any project to the municipal planning board, it's been through all the different departments for comment and approval, and that includes public safety, public works, et cetera. And they compile those and present those to the municipal planning board. That went the first time and was unanimously supported by the municipal planning board. Some of the neighbors appealed it, and it went back through again, and again, it was unanimously supported by the municipal planning board. So it was a combination. Since it's not my district, it's the furthest away from my district, I really yielded to staff, both the planning staff as well as the municipal planning board, that unanimously approved that, as did the hearing officer who listened to the appeal. So I kind of yielded to their expertise.
Okay, Ms. Grund, how would you have voted on that and why?
You know, obviously, my main goal is to be the voice for the people, and I will answer that question, but I want to make sure that I get to define who I am and my skills and ability and my background. I am a licensed real estate broker. I don't know if you knew that, Jim. So I have a little bit of an understanding on how contracts work and real estate works, but I also see perhaps, and my constituents have shared this, a conflict of interest. For someone serving our city council, you share the growth and how you're a business person, but the citizens in our community, someone literally called me yesterday and shared they live in the Southport area and that they feel their voice isn't being heard and that they don't hear about things until they're already decided, and that they feel the city's, the business people make the decisions and they tell them to stay out of it. It's none of their business until it's coming to fruition. So specifically for Rosemont, obviously I would deflect to making decisions that the staff obviously hopefully are doing their research, but really making sure that the citizens are engaged in that process throughout, because I'm their voice. You said the investment, they want a return on investment, the investors, of course I want that. But what I want the biggest return on investment is your vote. And that's your confidence that I will speak up for you. You are my biggest shareholder as your elected official. I hope that answers the question.
I'm not sure, so would that be yes? You would have voted for it?
If the city's, yes, I would have voted for it.
Okay.
Mike, I'll jump in with one, and I'm going to ask this of the challengers first, then I'll tweak it a little bit for Commissioner Gray. Ms. Grund and Mr. Moore, I know you guys have both run campaigns before, and I checked the vote tallies. I think what you snagged in past elections was not terribly significant. I think, Ms. Grund, it was about 7% for you, 8% for you, Mr. Moore. I'm curious, when you have run a campaign like that and didn't receive a big groundswell of support, what's sort of motivating you to try again, and what makes you think this time will be different? And I'll start with you, Ms. Grund.
Thank you. That is motivating. What motivates me is I'm putting myself out there. I'm moving the platform ahead to give the citizens a vote. You mentioned 7%. If you look at, since I'm a numbers person, efficiency of that campaign, my cost per vote was $5. And that's because I would have been zero, but I had to pay, as the city forces us to pay a qualification fee. They don't allow the waiving. Of course, you could do the petitions, but as we all know, that's a lot of time and money. Whereas the other candidates who had more votes were $20 cost per vote and $30 So if you look at that as the campaign, we were successful. We were the winner. We were the most successful in return on investment. Obviously, we weren't with the majority, but I'm okay representing the minority. It's not up to me on whether my campaign is making progress. It's up to the people on whether they're voting. Less than 10% show up to vote in elections for the city. I'm doing my part in qualifying, but it's not up to me. And I'm saying here I am to serve. Whether the citizens do their part and getting engaged and involved, that's up to them. And that's, I'm continuing to offer myself and my services, my time, talent, and treasure. We'll continue to do that. And when I feel confidence in our current officials, and those seeking election, perhaps I wouldn't have. I hope that answers your question.
All right. And how about you, Mr. Moore, with 8%, I think it was last time. What do you take away from that and why run again?
Well, you have to give the public an option. And, when you start having candidates receive campaign contributions from land use attorneys and developers, that's not good form. I don't receive money from developers or those high power law firms. You start getting money in that tries to influence a vote, and that's what folks need to understand. And the media fails to report on that, and it seems like the media concentrates on how much is in your bank. Well, that doesn't really matter. What matters is how people are going to vote and what they're going to bring to the table to help the communities. There's a lot of conflicts, and Commissioner Gray has conflicted out 4 times, and the year's not even up yet on votes. So that's a very distinguishing component between myself and the incumbent. So my motivation is to give back to the community. And again, like Sunshine Grund stated, it's about 10% of the folks that are coming out to vote. 10% of the folks voted who the mayor is. Okay. All of the elections are very low in voter turnout for the city races, and they're just not publicized enough.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gray, I'm going to flip this around a little bit for you. I think if my record checking is correct, you started in 2012, so this is your 9th year. You obviously have past campaigns behind you. There's so much to like about Orlando. In fact, I list 101 things I love every Thanksgiving. But our editorial board spends a lot of time talking about things that we could improve, including the economy. This economy is not working for everyone. We have the lowest wages of any major metro. Any major metro in America. How do you, having been there for 9 years, look at these problems like wages and affordable housing and say, yeah, I've been there 9 years, but I'm the guy to help address them going forward?
Yeah, fair question. And I'm not sure I'm the answer to all the problems, but here's a couple of things I think that contribute to that. One of the things I'm proud of, and by no means do I take all the credit for this. I'll take a portion of the credit, but the one thing that kind of differentiates the Lake Nona area, I think, is that we really have brought a lot of employment, and we brought some good employment along the lines of KPMG, USTA, Simcom Aviation, BB Aviation, a lot of different firms that have moved there. And what I remind myself and my neighbors is that, look, a firm like KPMG, an international firm looking to build an 800,000 square foot training facility, has a lot of options, and they've got a lot of people chasing them. So why did they pick Tavistock? Certainly, or Lake Nona, certainly it was Tavistock and having that financial stability that they know when they build a facility, Tavistock's not going anywhere. They've got a big investment with them. And so, that kind of dovetails into a little bit about what Bill continues to accuse me of. And that's fair. I have had some conflicts, but the majority of those, I think, Bill, when you look at are when those are the creation, the job incentives that, the state, the county, and the city all contribute to. Some of those employers are represented by my firm, CBRE. So I need to stay away from those. But those are votes that when people create jobs and show that they've hired the appropriate number of people at the appropriate wage, they get reimbursed. So I don't hide behind that. I do it out of abundance of caution. But Scott, back to you. Look, I think we have done that. We're going to continue to do that. in my role as a public official, District 1, is, when I meet with these folks, look, they've already kind of done their evaluation of whether they want to move to Lake Nona. I think what they also want to know is, does the public sector endorse their move? Will the public sector help facilitate the growth of their business? And in other words, is the public sector welcoming, or are we, hey, we're not sure we want you? And what I try to do is meet with them and assure them that, as long as they're good neighbors, they are welcome to move to Lake Nona. And that kind of differentiates us. We're not just suburban sprawl. We have an employment center.
Thank you.
Sure.
If I can jump in, I wanted to ask you all about affordable housing. I believe I can start with Mr. Gray. You mentioned a lot of job creation and a lot of job growth. I wondered what, in your district and citywide, what is the first thing that you would do right now to address the affordable housing crisis that is happening? I know there's a lot of long-term solutions. What do you think is the first thing short term?
Yeah, a couple of things, Jay. One, I'm already doing, and that is, as you're probably aware, the state legislature required each municipality to have a public official now on their affordable housing committee. And the mayor asked me to chair that. So I am chairing that now. We meet monthly in City Hall. It's a public meeting, anybody can watch. But our goal is to make recommendations to City Council, and I serve with 8 other residents, to make recommendations to City Council about how we can modify our strategies, ordinances, et cetera, to help facilitate affordable housing. The biggest issue to me as I look at it, and I'm learning about it, I must admit, there's 2 challenges. One in District 1, and I'll look at Vista Lakes and Lake Nona, is land is just extremely expensive. As most of us know, when I moved out there 17 years ago, there was a bunch of farms. So we got a lot of very rich farmers in the southeast part of Orlando because they've sold their land to residential and commercial developers. And so land is very expensive. Some of the stuff up and down Narcoossee Road's $1 million an acre. And so it's a cost issue. And I think the city, and we can't solve it ourselves, it's got to be part of the county and the state. But what the city can do is eliminate cost. I don't think you can, given what Scott was talking earlier about wages. Yeah, we're still heavily dependent on a tourist sector that doesn't pay anything much more than minimum wage, if that. So it's hard to think people are going to continue to afford to pay more rent. We've got to eliminate the costs. And the first one to look at, quite frankly, is the impact fees and the fees that the city of Orlando charge to do these things. You can't waive the fees, but you certainly can reimburse those. So it's a net, a net zero to the developer, because you've got to eliminate some of the costs, in my view, to facilitate more affordable housing, not only in District 1, but the rest of the city as well. And I think we're just starting to learn that, quite frankly, as we dig into it.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Mr. Moore, what is the first thing that you would do to address the affordable housing crisis on an immediate level?
Well, I think we can look at helping those who rent. Right now, the rentals are $1,500 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I'm actually trying to help someone find a place, and there's no inventory. In that there's low inventory, and then there's a cost issue on the rental prices. I think we incentivize landlords to lower the rent prices by working with our county property appraiser's office to give some property tax incentives to lower their property tax for those business or those locations where they have housing. And in return, they have to lower their monthly rent by a percentage, or we have to come up with some kind of calculation on that. There's not going to be one magic bullet to fix the problem. Wages need to go up. Employment needs to go up. Opportunities for employment needs to go up. Lake Nona is growing and they're building more and more restaurants, but that's great. You may have a job but you're not going to be able to afford a rental property in that area. It's just not going to happen. So we have to work with the landlords, I believe, and that's one of the key elements to getting this under control without imposing rent control. And, everyone likes to say that as a possible solution, but now you're getting into supply and demand and our markets. So I think we incentivize first, and then we see what we can do there, and then move on to another idea.
Thank you. Ms. Grund, how would you answer this?
I would answer, I agree, Bill, that it's all about opportunities. The economic partnership has a scorecard, and they had mentioned 3 areas to move us along in the city for broad-based prosperity, and opportunities is one of them, capabilities and access. And I think when we do that, we get to drive our communities into a environment where rentals, housing is more affordable. Until we get there, we have to build that bridge within our communities. And so you said, what can I do? Day one is getting to the constituents so they know what programs are available right now. Emergency rental assistant program funding. We have an additional 6 million that was allocated, and there's multiple programs. And I know the city is actually funding staff to support those endeavors. And so that's what I would do. As your commissioner, I'm your voice. Obviously, I'm not doing the day-to-day. We need the experts in those departments doing them. And I share with the staff when I hear that it's not working and where we have the gap. And then it's also this position is, again, to give that network back and forth so that the citizens know what is available to them. And so I would just, education and empowerment would be ideal in alleviating the housing crisis.
Thanks. Mr. Moore, just to follow up real quickly, if you'd be very brief, but you were talking about incentivizing landlords to on when it comes to rent. I'm sorry, I may have missed it, but what do you mean by that? Do you mean like giving them money so they'll lower rents, or what is that?
Not giving them money, but giving them a property tax break. The city revenue comes from property taxes, a good chunk of it. But if we incentivize these landlords to opt into a program, the city can allow them to get a reduction in their property tax for that particular parcel that they're renting out. So if you have a landlord that has several properties, they could enjoy a pretty substantial price break for paying property taxes for those parcels.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moore, I guess I'll start with you on this next question. Because you brought it up initially by saying what you don't like about the idea of, I guess, trying to get a handle on the downtown nighttime scene. Not something I'm real familiar with because I don't go out at night that much, man my age. But I wonder though, if you could talk about what do you think should be done, because it does appear to be a problem and particularly manifests itself as a public safety problem for police officers and the public. So what would you want to do to get that in hand?
Well, the first thing that the public needs to realize is that any elected official and any appointed official that's saying that crime is down in Orlando or Orange County is a total fabrication. They cannot make a wide sweeping claim like that. They shouldn't, because it misleads the public. The truth of the matter is maybe property crimes are down, but violent crime is way up. We just had an Orlando police officer bashed in the head with a brick downtown Orlando, and it was video recorded by the perpetrator to be streamed either right then or at a later time. We have to get more police on the street. For one, we have to get our authorized strength levels. That is the key word. Authorized strength. City Council authorizes the strength of the police and the fire, and they barely made the minimum. The city of Orlando has grown by 20.4% between 2010 and the 2019 census data. That's census data. Has the growth in Orlando kept up with that? Our infrastructure and what have you, our police and fire personnel, has it kept up to 20.4%? No, it hasn't. In fact, the police are at about 17% and the fires are at 13%. So the police officers, to reach that 20% growth mark, you need about 30 additional police officers. And then you have police officers retiring, getting terminated, moving on to another job, leaving the profession. We have 12 police officers retiring by the end of the year, and we have 3 firefighters retiring by the end of the year. It takes a long time to spin up a police officer to protect downtown and District 1. District 1 has a new substation that's coming online, maybe online at this point in time, but that's no good if you don't have a police officer to put in there or to base out of. So Lake Nona, it takes about 15 minutes to get out there and no traffic, or maybe even 20. You add traffic into that, a police officer can't get out there. So our police officers have to be in the region ready to respond. And as a city of Orlando, we are failing in that regard.
Okay, Ms. Grund, what are your ideas for how to get the situation downtown late at night under control?
Late at night, out of control. Obviously, police presence is needed, and just driving. The sound variance issue mentioned downtown. I know for District 1, Boxy Park has become a sound issue for the residents. And so I think, those are the driving forces of the communities. And so I would not, I'm in support of keeping the peace within our community and the downtown area, and obviously in District 1, and would support that.
Okay, Mr. Gray, what do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, I've been a pretty vocal on this one just because, again, my entire career I've worked downtown. I've officed in 5 different buildings downtown. So I know downtown pretty well, both in day, not as well at night like you, Mike. I don't spend a lot of time downtown, but here's my opinion. My opinion is our mix of uses is way out of whack. We've got somewhere between 70 and 80 bars downtown. And if you go up and down Orange Avenue, and I've challenged anybody, and poor Ryan's heard me say this in council, but tell me there's 5 restaurants downtown with tablecloths, and you can't get more than that. So we don't have higher end dining. We don't have any retail locations. We got a cigar bar and a Walgreens drugstore. So we've got to get our mix a little better. And I've tried to encourage our downtown CRA and, quite frankly, the mayor. And I meet with the mayor once a month. It's a public meeting. Anybody's welcome to attend. But I do that so not only do he hears the issues in District 1, but I want it reinforced downtown. And I've encouraged him to do a more comprehensive study of what it would take to get some of the high-end restaurants, retailers, to come downtown. Is that free rent? Is that free parking? Is that helping subsidize employees? But bottom line, Mike, we've got to change the mix of the activity downtown, because it's all bars. And here's what happens to the poor taxpayer. The bars sell beer all night, and then at 2 o'clock, they say, "Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. You've had too much to drink. It's time for you to go home." The bouncers push Mr. Gray out into the street, and then the taxpayers have to pay for it, both in cleanup as well as in police. And so if we're going to have a entertainment district, which we need, most vibrant towns need that, I think you need to somehow find a way to get those folks in that entertainment district to help pay the freight, because I don't think it's fair for people in District 1, like Nona, to pay part of their tax burden to go to clean up downtown. So I think at the end of the day, it's the mix. How do you fix that? We used to have an ordinance that said there were no bars within 1,500 feet of a school or a church. And fortunately, in downtown Orlando, those are mixed enough that worked pretty well to control the number of bars. But over time, I think trying to spur activity downtown, that has been reduced to 500 feet, and that's why we have so many bars. So that's one quick way we can do it. I've shared that with the mayor. I get along with the mayor on a lot of different issues. This is probably one he and I disagree with, but we're trying.
Okay.
Can I just add that the downtown owners of the land down there pay an extra $1 million in property tax to cover some of these fees? It's not like District 1 is paying for everything.
Bill, you're right, but a lot of that money goes to the west side. We're spending a lot of time, a lot of the CRA money I think you're referring to, and you're right, goes to the west side to support housing. We just did a new park, Lake Lorna Dune Park, Camping World Stadium, et cetera. So you're right that they do pay that. But look, the other thing, and I'll be quiet, I'll let this go. The disappointing part to me is the question I asked at council 2 months ago is, Do the downtown bar owners have an association? Are they trying to work as a group to fix the violence downtown? And the answer is they do not. So that tells
They
me
just formed
they're not
one.
that worried about it. Or else they'd have an association trying to deal with it. But enough
That's a
said.
responsibility of city officials. I mean,
Okay, I'm going to switch the topic here
Yeah.
and move on to one other specific thing, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Gray. I know you have not been shy about being on the minority or losing end of a few votes on city council. I wanted to pick one. I think there was a movement to require electric charging stations for vehicles, and I think you were on the maybe 5-2, the two side of that 5-2 vote. Can you tell us a little bit about your thinking on that and why you were on the minority there?
Yeah, I was not at all opposed to the notion of electric vehicle charging. We know it's coming. You can read it, you can see it, it's coming, and I embrace that. The part I was frustrated with is I think we're imposing this restriction on commercial as well as affordable housing, believe it or not, to install charging stations early in the process. Electric vehicles in mass won't be, I mean, and now I think at best it's 5% of the car inventory. It'll get more, but until that happens, I didn't think it made sense to require property owners to spend the money to install it until we know. Technology's changed so rapidly. 5 years from now, I'm not convinced, and nobody can convince me that we're going to do the standard little nozzle that we plug into the side of the car. We may have solar recharging by then. I don't know. But what I was trying to say was commercial property owners are smart enough and savvy enough to know they've got to spend the money to put that in when it's needed, or else they're going to lose residents and customers and tenants. And so my only point was, it's a great idea. Let's not do it right now. Let's wait until we get closer, because it doesn't take but at most 6 months to pull a permit and put in charging stations. Let's do it and enforce it when it's needed, not now, 5 or 6 years before it's needed. That's it.
All right. Ms. Grund, if you're familiar with the issue, do you know how you would have voted on that plan?
Obviously, I would support any kind of movement in the sustainability for our future generations. That's a big part of my platform. And I don't see why we wouldn't encourage commercial real estate to support that and to be the driving force and to pay for it. And I lead by example personally. We have solar for our homes, which is obviously, I know you're talking about charging stations for vehicles. But why not? I think we have to be a leader, obviously, within our region in green energy. And I think that's definitely a way. And I would have supported, obviously, the city in that recommendation.
And Mr. Moore, what do you think about requiring developments to install those?
I thought it was a good idea. I would have voted for it. Lake Nona, the income level out there is such that well, not most, but a great many of those folks that reside out there actually have electric vehicles, and they would benefit from this. I would go further and try to incentivize those businesses with those stations to put solar panels on the top of their gas station or what have you. I think city buildings should have solar panels on their tops of their roofs. We can harness the necessary energy and have these charging stations at a reduced cost. I can tell you that these folks that go door to door are quoting about $60,000 for my 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. And I found it where the materials are actually worth $23,000 and I could install it myself. So it's not super expensive and you get federal tax breaks on it. I think it's a no-brainer. It's something that we need for the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
I wanted to ask one final question because we're almost out of time. And that has to do with the police department in Orlando. There was a report recently that had quite a number of recommendations and spoke to the issue of use of force among police officers in Orlando. Ms. Moore, I'd like to start with you and just ask you, do you think that this is a problem in Orlando with police using force too often and too aggressively, and what should be done about it?
Well, use of force, the philosophy behind use of force is the person you're dealing with will dictate how much force you use. Now, where police officers go over and above that force, they need to be disciplined. But we have to realize that it's not a systemic problem. Yes, it does occur, and yes, we have video of it occurring, and those officers should be dealt with. But you have to remember, officers have due process. And just like a bad guy has due process, like Markeith Lloyd, who shot one of our Orlando police officers, he's now dragging it out, and the judge said, no, we're moving forward. Police officers have due process by statutory provisions under the Police Officers Bill of Rights. They also have the traditional, Fifth Amendment and Sixth Amendment right. So we have to keep that in mind. And I think with a community review board, a lot would go, they would be better served if each one of them rode with the police officers and there was maybe a requirement to even serve on that board to actually do a certain amount of hours so they get to see the reality of high stress situations. And I'm not talking about with a shadow car. I'm talking about sitting in the passenger seat of a patrol car and witnessing what goes on firsthand. That's kind of, that would give them a perspective. And I think that's where the friction is between the police and the civilian review board, is that the police are afraid that a layperson is not going to understand what's taking place and what level of force could have been used but wasn't, or why a particular level of force was used under the circumstances. So where a police officer is wrong, definitely get rid of them, but we have to do it within the constraints of the law.
Okay. Mr. Gray, what are your thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, I think that argument was fair early on, that probably it was a little heavy-handed. And I think through some of the events earlier this year, the tail end of last year, it brought light to the fact that not just Orlando, but other areas were perhaps a bit heavy-handed. And what we did at the city is said, look, we've got to look internally and see if we can kind of change this. And as you probably know and reported on, we engaged some folks from Bethune-Cookman and others to take a look and more of the transparency, look inside, see where we can improve. And they came up with some good suggestions, one of which was sometimes when we go to respond to calls with folks that have some mental illness, they felt intimidated by just police. So we've started to send social workers with the police in certain instances to kind of diffuse some of that. So I guess, Mike, what we've done is I think we were a little bit swayed too far on the heavy-handed side. I think we're coming back. We've got more work to do, but I do give the police chief and others credit that we've tried to be a bit more transparent. And I think the message is clear now. It's got to be a balance between residents know the difference from right and wrong, and they need to learn how to behave and follow the law. But I think also police have realized they've got to change some of the tactics they've done in the past. And so I think we're on the right path, but we got a little more work to do.
Okay,
and I would finally say in closing, Bill and I both did a presentation to the Fraternal Order of Police to this kind of format to talk about, our thoughts. And I didn't think I had much of a chance, Bill being a former police officer, but they endorsed me. And so I think they realize that I'll listen to both sides and try to find that balance.
Okay, Ms. Grund, what are your thoughts on that?
I'd just like to share in full transparency. I was never invited, so how could they, I'm not seeking their endorsement.
I didn't find out until the last minute either.
Well, that's how endorsements, the true endorsement that we need are from the voters in District 1. They're the ones who get to decide who the elected official. The question is use of force. Obviously, when our police are strong and respectful of our citizens, we're a stronger community. I feel like those are not our policies to be so to break from what we expect. And so I would just be very obviously supportive of our police. I know we have some grants for cultural training for our police officers, so would support that. And then, Jim, Commissioner Jim had mentioned the social workers that go out and de-escalate, obviously, some of the situations. So obviously, I would be supportive. We all want to live in a safe community, and so but that includes on both ends. The police are there to protect us, and we shouldn't live in fear of them abusing their power, which I don't believe is, any of us would want, and our mayor, who's leading the staff, over 3,500 within our city, would want either.
Okay. I want to thank you all very much for participating. We appreciate it very much, and I want to wish all of you good luck. Thank you.